understandable, yep. You better have something to, yeah. Ashland's a nice area. So we're back to your, would you mind saying a prayer? We're back your way.
This is
On Tuesday. Yep, we'll get 3 more on Tuesday. Fingers crossed. Okay. Good to know. Well, it does. Quorum's important. 'Cause hit your. I think we are. Want to touch
Ready to watch a debate tonight?
that. Right. We need to. Ready? I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. It's Thursday, June 27th, 2024. I've asked Member Wilson to give us an opening prayer, and then if you all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads before thee once again in this beginning of this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We express our gratitude once again for being members of this community. We're grateful for the people that work with us, and we pray that as this meeting unfolds, we may be able to be enlightened as to what we need to know and to make decisions in the best interest of the county. We thank you for all we have, recognize your hand, and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion for that?
I move to approve it.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Wilson and a second.
I'll second.
Second by Member Little. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And I'm, again, voting since there's only 4 of us. Declaration of conflicts of interest. Any member on the commission with tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Seeing none in attendance, we will move on to our first agenda item. It says legislative. It's a public hearing discussion decision, request for approval of a text amendment to modify the Morgan County Code subdivision section. Janet, welcome.
welcome. This is going to be pretty simple. So House Bill. So House Bill 174 required some updates to our land use code, and specifically it's in regards to subdivision review in certain instances, and then plat lot line adjustments. So if we go through, do you have the? You want me to use that machine? I can do that. I can go there. Can you hear me? Okay, so we can, what I did was I copied the whole subdivision code just to make sure, like, again, we could catch things that wouldn't be consistent with the updates. And we can really just skip down to 15544. Okay, so this is the plat amendments for the lot line adjustments. It just kind of changed the language and updated it and made it simpler. And that's straight out of the code. Any questions on that?
Do you have a clean version? It's just hard to follow.
It is super hard to follow. So,
You've got all
Unfortunately, you're going to have to learn to read it this way because state statute, in order to make these changes, you have to show all the crossouts and then the bolded. So a clean version would have just adopted everything. So the way it's written is how it has to be written in order to make a text amendment change. Okay.
but still, if you had a, like in Word, I could toggle and say final draft and see, make sure all the periods are in the right spots and the commas and whatnot.
it does, it gets kind of
But when it's
confusing.
like this, it's just difficult to make sure I had all the content. So if you don't have
Yeah, we draft the text amendments according to how they need to be drafted in order for it to be adopted as a text amendment. So it has the crossouts, it's got the bold capped for anything added. That's how it's supposed to be written. But then it wouldn't show you the changes that are being made.
Okay. Member Bishop, can you turn on your mic?
I thought.
There
Sorry.
you go.
Thought it was on. Does that make sense?
Not really, because all the changes that are being made are outlined.
I
It makes
understand.
it easy
It's
to
just,
see
it's
their
just when
bold
you look
capped.
at the entire thing corrected, you can. It's just easier to look at something like this because you got a lot of indents and subparagraphs, and so you just want to make sure they're all right. So,
Duly noted.
Can I ask a question? Are you saying more about grammar, punctuation, things like that, or just for ease of reading?
well,
Because-
in this case, as
Because
I
we'll
look at-
take care of the grammar, punctuation. We can make sure that that's all set.
Yeah, in this case, when I look at it, it's just I've got an A and then an A is crossed out, and then I've got like an is, but there's no, it's still indented, so I'm trying to follow how the paragraphing goes, and it's just difficult to do when it's in a document like this. I get it that you're showing what was added, what was subtracted. Got it. That's appreciated. But then to look at how the final document lies out, then it would be nice to be able to say, okay, this is how it all actually flows together.
So if you go to the handout that's next to you and go to page 43, that has the markups too, but it might be a little more easy to follow.
Okay, so like, okay.
And again, the A's and the ones and that aren't going to match up to the code because our code is written differently.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you. That
bet.
is helpful.
So then we go down to 155.50, and this is a brand new subsection I've added. And it's basically I've cut and paste the new rules regarding review of subdivisions for, I think it's limited to single-family dwellings, two-family dwellings, or townhomes. And so that's completely pulled out of the state code. Now, the highlighted yellows are words that I've added just to make it more readable. and to fit in our code.
I do have one question. It's in 155.502 application, and down in 5B, talks about a public hearing for a subdivision, for administrative. So,
We can change that to,
because we don't want, that just causes frustration to the public to think they can have input on a administrative item.
okay.
But it says, right now, it says hold no more than one public hearing. If you say public meeting, it's possible we would need to postpone something, so I'd hate to limit it just to one. I mean, it should only take one,
But I think that's the point of what they did, yeah.
so I guess we could, I don't know. But just, I want the public hearing, if we can remove it, I don't know, with it being out of state code.
I think we can change, yeah, the meeting to hearing.
The public meeting.
The intent of the change was to speed up subdivision review process considerably, probably because of problems that they're having around the state getting subdivision applications through the process. I don't think it was the intent to make it a public hearing, which would imply a legislative process. So I would suggest making a recommendation, if you make a recommendation of approval, to add that as a stipulation that the hearing be changed to a meeting.
Just as a point of order, we have to make, as part of our recommendation of approval, we then have to go ahead, any changes other than what's here, we would have to go through as part of our recommendation. Is that how we have to do it? Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. You ready for more of the other comments?
Yeah, if you have any more comments, we're in this section now.
So in my introductory meeting to the county, Josh brought me in with our lawyer and said I need to read the documents. So I did. So that causes you problems. So I have a couple questions. There are actually more than a couple. So do you mind if I take that time now?
That's great.
Okay. So for subdivisions, the very first thing on 155.385, it says short title, which I don't think that's what it really should say there as a subdivisions, unless Morgan County subdivision ordinance. I don't know if that's short title. It didn't make any sense to me, especially when I was going through and looking at it in chapter form. So you just look at the headers and it says short title. I'm like, what's short title? That makes no sense to me. So for people looking through it, it would be more descriptive to have what it is. And so, I don't know.
So what would you recommend?
Subdivisions, again, just repeating the header up above. So that's the first comment. In
Where exactly are you at?
the very, very top of
Very top of subdivisions, it's
155.385.
Right at the beginning,
Start,
first page.
first word.
That's not what's proposed to be changed tonight.
I
If you
understand.
want us to make additional changes in the future
That's why I asked.
to direct staff, then direct staff. We misunderstood what you were asking.
Okay.
So things like this, this is not what's proposed in front of
Okay,
you.
That's fine.
If you want us direct staff to make changes to the subdivision section in general,
Okay.
then during the staff business and regulations, you can direct staff or get a quorum to direct staff to make additional changes, and then you can provide those to us and we can look at them.
Sure.
But tonight is only looking at what's
That's-
required by SB 174, which is state legislature mandated.
Absolutely fine.
Okay, sorry, we
Sorry about
misunderstood.
that.
No?
But short title, it says that throughout the whole ordinance.
Yeah.
Each
Which is
section.
Which is kind of wacky, right?
Well, it's always,
No, the short title just basically defines what the ordinance is. That's it's a short title for the subdivision regulations. It's called the Morgan County Subdivision Ordinance. That's the short title.
It's fine. But that's just one quick comment. So I had a bunch of others.
If you
But I'm
want,
not going to do them tonight.
yeah, if you want, you can come into my office. We can sit down. We can go through
Just
the
email
comments.
because I've got them all highlighted and marked up.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Did you have anything with the 174?
Yeah.
It's kind of boring.
Yeah.
It is.
I do have a question. I talked with Josh on that same page. It was in 42. But this time it's under 7B. It may not require planning commission or county legislative body approval for final plat approval. Is that something the county commission will decide who will approve the final plat? It says just may not.
Yeah, they would make the final determination of who would be the land use authority that would review those. If you want to make a recommendation that the final plat be reviewed and approved administratively by the zoning administrator, that would also be a stipulation you'd want to add in there.
I guess, is that something that our county ordinance can address, whether it's different sides of subdivision, whether it's just zoning administrator or planning commission? Or does it have to be all or nothing? I mean, is it all treated the same?
I think they're supposed to all be treated the same. The SB 174 did not split out small subdivisions versus large subdivisions. It just made the determination that it was to apply to single family, two family, and townhome subdivisions. So it wouldn't even apply to multifamily condominiums. It doesn't apply to commercial or industrial. And on top of that, it doesn't apply to any development that's located in a geologic hazard area. So this is so limited in scope in our county. Because we have so many geologic hazard areas and we have a map to prove it. So the scope of the SB 174 as it affects our county will be limited as it is.
I don't have a problem leaving that language in there. I guess it can be decided at a later time what the county commission.
Right, but
What
if
to
you
do
have a
with it.
recommendation, I think that you can still add that as part of a recommendation.
Okay, we can just discuss that.
The state is putting pressure on certain counties. We ended up being on the front, on the early county, like with the bigger counties, I think because they realized that there's a lot of growth here. And so our deadline was February. We adopted a temporary ordinance that kind of gets us through until we were able to adapt it to our ordinance specifically.
Okay.
But the state legislature is putting pressure on the counties to move things through more quickly, and I think that they're seeing in certain areas that maybe it's not being moved as quickly as some would like, and so they have people pressuring them to pass laws, and this is just one of those mandates that came down, and so it may change a little bit about what we do, but it's because they're getting pressure, and now they're mandating to the counties to follow a certain way that they want to see it done.
Okay. That's all I had in that petition section. Does anybody else have any questions?
I really couldn't find anything, so I tried to pay attention as much as I could.
I know.
Need to trust the lawyers on this one. Okay, if there's no more questions for county attorney or staff?
The only question I'd have, is this mirror then, and if the county commission passes this will mirror pretty much exactly what the state legislature is requiring right now?
Yes, it's cut and paste out of, yep.
That's all I
Okay.
really needed, Madam Chair.
Okay. Just a little bit discussion. I think changing the public hearing to public meeting needs to be done. But as far as the final approval, do you, Commissioner, have any concern, or what would you prefer, that it be handled by staff? Or do you want to see the final approval?
And what was the definition, small subdivision?
No, all subdivisions that are qualified under this code.
Yeah, I'd like, so how small are we talking? Anything?
It could be anything. It can be large if it's not in the geological hazard area.
Yeah,
Which is-
so my reading of the SB 174 is that this would apply to any size subdivision, whether it's a 2-lot or a 500-lot subdivision or whatever, as long as it's single family, 2-family, or townhomes. Yeah. So even if you wanted, like currently, a subdivision that's more than 10 lots, so 11 plus, would have a concept plan that would be approved by the county commission. They would have a preliminary plat that would be approved by the county commission, and they would have the final plat go directly to the county commission and not go to the planning commission. Everything else goes through the planning commission as well. Small subdivisions, the concept plan is approved by me, and the preliminary and final plat are approved by you, the planning commission. This new SB 174 would change that for the single family, 2-family, and townhome developments to allow the designated land use authority to, and it modifies how concept plans are going to be done as well. So the concept plan would be handled by me, and it would and we would have to have comments to them by the time we hold a pre-application meeting with them. So right up front, we have to have there's 4 things that we have to provide them, and it's comments on their concept. We have to provide them checklists as well as applications that they would fill out and apply. And then there was one other thing. And then after they got concept, after they did the pre-application meeting and they addressed the comments about the concept plan, I'm not real sure how long I have to look at a concept plan since it's all part of the pre-application meeting. And currently, if somebody wants a pre-application meeting, they just come into my office. They can show up, and if I don't have a meeting, I'll hold the pre-application with them then, or we can set up a meeting within a day or two. So right now, there's not even a wait for a pre-application meeting. So I'm not sure how much time I get to review a concept plan to provide comments for. So there's some issues that I see with SB 174. The saving grace of SB 174 is that we don't have to apply it if there's geologic hazard areas. It'll revert to the current review process if there's geologic hazard areas. So there's going to be very few subdivisions that this is going to apply to, because there are very few properties within the county that have 0 geologic hazards, according to our map.
So, this is, I should probably know this, Josh, and I don't. Under this new ordinance, when somebody comes in for an application, what does that give them vesting, in terms of vesting? Does that change vested rights at all? Does that?
No, it doesn't change their vested rights. Vested rights are created through the spending of capital or real money. So if they submit a preliminary plat and we deem the preliminary plat as a complete application, then there's a start to the vesting. because they've spent money on engineering plans, they've spent money on water rights, they've spent money on the development of the property. So there's a start to the vesting, but that's done through the preliminary plat now anyway. So there's really no change to how the vesting occurs. It's just, this is supposed to provide a quicker route through. But even the way it's written doesn't necessarily mean it's going to speed up, because the county can have up to 4 reviews, and each review we have 20 business days to review it. And it says in the text that if they don't address the comments, then they don't advance to the next review cycle. So, I mean, technically, if they don't respond and they don't answer, then they are perpetually in the first review, and it's not on the county's problem. And it can be dragged out at that point by them because they're not addressing our comments. So, I mean, yeah, I think this was supposed to be a fix, but I don't see it fixing anything. Just by the way it's written.
So, is it within our purview, or would it be helpful to you for us to set time, or is that even not within our ability to do?
You can make a recommendation. I don't know if it's really needed, but if you'd like to try to set a time in your recommendation, you could do that.
Would that be helpful to you or not?
There's the timing for the preliminary plats, and there's the timing for review for the final plats. It's just the concept portion of it is just not fleshed out. Like right now we treat it as a separate application. Going forward, for those applications that are not in a geologic hazard area, the concept plan is basically their pre-application, and I have to have comments by that time. So, I mean, if you wanted to set a time limit, then I would set a timing in there that the pre-application cannot be held any earlier than 2 weeks or 14 business days, or however you want to word it, in order to give staff time to generate comments for the concept. I mean, that would have to be where the comment would, or the recommendation would be. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And I'm also reading on the 7B, and it's in conjunction, because there's an and above it, so maybe just leave it as is, because it's talking that the final can run with the preliminary application, and then it says and, so once you start messing with the second part.
But even if they run them both concurrently, we have
Okay.
separate reviews based on the SB 174 for preliminary and final. So we're going to be reviewing both documents and returning them with comments, and we are allowed up to 4 review cycles. So,
But if we give it to you to approve the final, this is talking about when preliminary and final go together, so then you would be reviewing preliminary too.
well, we're going to review preliminary anyway.
No, but approving a preliminary, I should say, not reviewing.
No, I would say that if the Planning Commission is the land use authority for preliminary plats, regardless of whether I'm the review and approval authority for the final plats, the preliminary plat is still going to come to you as the land use authority over preliminary plats. So, like right now, preliminary plat, it goes to you for recommendation, and then it goes to the county commission for approval of the preliminary plat. And then a large subdivision would turn around and they skip you completely and go directly to the county commission for final plat approval. So the way it would work if I'm the approving authority for the final plat is that they would go to you for their preliminary plat approval, and then after that approval and they've addressed your comments, then I would look at the final plat and approve the final plat based on
Concurrent.
concurrently or down the road after a certain period of time where they've addressed your comments or the engineer's comments. So it wouldn't happen concurrently at the same time regardless.
Okay, this go kind of talking about them running concurrent, so I don't know. But it's all May, so
Yeah.
May doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's not mandated.
Yeah, we don't like the month of May.
Josh, On that, the comments on the concept plan, the way I read that is that they only get those comments on the concept plan if they request that pre-application meeting.
I guess I had read it that they are required to have a pre-application meeting, and the pre-application has to be set up within a certain period of time.
It's an if the applicant requests.
Oh, okay.
So I
So
don't
that's
think you
not
need a
even
time
mandated.
thing on that. I think you get to skip your comments if they don't request it.
Okay.
So the only hangup is on number 7, if just to leave it as is, or if we specify. Again, it's still May.
You have a better feel for
Well,
how
I
much
don't
time.
on this one.
How much time does that take to approve like one? It's gonna take forever. They come in all the time, don't they?
What,
No. Applications for.
subdivisions?
There are some subdivision applications where their engineer or surveyor has not addressed the comments, and we're still waiting for those comments, and it's been 8-9 months. And we've called and we've requested and we've called and said it's in your court. You need to understand that after 6 months, I can procedurally deny your application because you're not moving it forward. And there's some that we've held on to not doing that because they've asked us to hold off because they're trying to get certain certifications through other departments like Weaver Morgan Health Department. But sometimes it's just the engineer and the surveyors are not turning them around and getting it back to us, addressing the comments. Sometimes we'll get it back and they have not addressed the comments that we gave them in the first place. So that's kind of what I was trying to allude to with the SB 174. It's probably not going to change anything if the applicants, engineers, and surveyors are not, making the changes, and doing their job.
Janet, do you have any comment on that number 7? What's it saying, that they can run concurrent, and the planning commission or the county commission would not be required to approve, may not be required. Correct?
Correct. They can't say that planning commission has to approve.
Right,
That's how I read it.
but if I'm the approval authority for final plats and you're the approval authority for preliminary plats, they absolutely cannot be approved concurrently. Because I can't approve a final plat until after
So-
the preliminary plat is
Correct.
approved.
So if we try to change it, then we can't have that they run concurrent.
Well, but what if they provided preliminary plat with final plat?
And
together?
and they're okay with you being the approving authority for both. In that case, they could be concurrent because we do it now for small subdivisions.
Right, no, I understand that, if we are, but if you're for final and we're for preliminary, then it can't be run concurrent.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything that would be against them saying, we want them concurrent, we want them to go to planning commission, we want planning commission to approve both. I don't see, even now in our code, I have the authority to bump things up to the planning commission if I think that they're going to be controversial. And in the same vein, I think that if they want to bump it up and you review and approve both, that's probably why it says may.
So probably just leave it as it is and see how it goes.
I would leave it as is.
Okay.
And I would agree, it's not very well written.
Yeah, it's confusing. So basically, the only major change would be the public hearing to public meeting.
That is a major change, and I would absolutely recommend you make that recommendation.
But then again, it says may, but how do you may hold no more than one?
It wasn't written well. We didn't write it.
Okay.
We copied it.
I
Well, just-
agree. And I think that changing it to public meeting is consistent with other places
Okay.
in this code. It says meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Okay, then I'll be ready for a motion. And that's the only thing that changes 155.5025B from public hearing to public meeting.
We need to be that specific in our motion. Tell me the numbers.
Can you make the motion?
No, I can't make the motion. It's 155.5025B. Public hearing to public meeting, changing the wording.
You say you're ready for a motion?
Yes.
Are you gonna make it, Matt? You want me to make it?
So you were paying attention to the numbers.
Madam Chairman, I move we recommend approval to the planning commission to approve State Bill 174 code text amendment to amend Morgan County Code to update the sections of the code that are mandated by the state legislature that refer to the subdivision from the draft ordinance dated June 27, 2024 with the following corrections. In section 155-502, subsection 5B, is that subsection 5B? Whatever it is. We would like to change the word from public hearing to public meeting.
Okay, I have a motion by member Wilson. Is there a second? A second by member Bishop. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carry unanimous. We're now on to business and staff questions. I believe we have some training.
The planning commission is required to have a certain amount of training each year, and so part of that, this meeting and the next meeting, Garrett will be doing the open meeting law, and then the meeting after that, we'll have Janet kind of go over the annexation laws, since there's been a lot of questions about that in the past year. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And we may get this done in one meeting, depending on how many questions you have, because we will not be going over closed meetings and electronic meetings, because that's just not something that the Planning Commission has to deal with, which I would say fortunately. So anyway, the Open and Public Meetings Act is under 52 in the code, so you can see just on the screen. I've highlighted a few places that I want to direct your attention to. And I think what I'm going to go over right now is probably the most important thing to keep in mind, because as public servants, what we try to do is maintain that transparency. And so the state legislature is putting their intent into the very beginning of the code itself. And so they say it's the intent that the state agencies and political subdivisions, which we're a political subdivision of the state, that we take our actions openly and conduct our deliberations openly as well. And so there's the Government Records and Management Act that is to provide transparency as well. And as we're making decisions, we want the public to be able to come attend meetings. They can listen online. They can do a grammar request to request certain records that we refer to. Emails, things of all that nature. And I know this is an Open Meetings Act training, but just a liability training for the county. A good rule of thumb that one of my mentors taught me is never put anything in writing that you don't want read in court. So just kind of keep that in mind. Even if you feel that you're acting personally as a member of the Planning Commission, the public will attribute anything you do personally to the county. So just kind of keep that in mind. And, you know, when you're using your county email and you're responding to county business, just do it in a nice way.
What about our,
as much as we
our
can.
personal emails?
So don't do county business on personal emails is what I would suggest. You know,
Okay.
yeah. But go ahead.
No, if someone emails you, not necessarily business or whatever, county business, and you make comments on that, could that ever be grandma'd or pulled in?
No, if it has nothing to do with the county business, then it wouldn't be a government record.
Okay,
but you want to be careful using personal emails for county business, because then you're opening that door.
correct, okay.
Right. And so if you just kind of think of it, if you're running a business, think of it as not commingling funds. You keep, okay, all my business funds are in this account, all my personal are in this account, and if I use business for personal one time, then I may have pierced that corporate veil and lost my liability protection. So, just as a general rule, moving forward, even if you have used personal, try and keep it separate so you're not commingling the records and giving someone an argument to go to your personal email. So, all right. So I kind of cross-referenced this down a little bit later. I'm going to scroll down here. So keeping things open to the public. There is a section here where it says individuals constituting a quorum of a public body may not act together outside a meeting in a concerted and deliberate way to predetermine an action to be taken by the public body at a meeting on a relevant matter. I know sometimes you may be tempted to call someone and be like, well, hey, how are you going to vote? And kind of count your votes and see where it may or may not go. You don't want to do that. All of those deliberations, all of those actions should be taken in public. And so, even if it's tempting to kind of test the waters, don't do that. Just save all of that discussion for here. And then the reason, or part of the reason to keep that in mind as well, is that if there's any violation of the Open Meetings Act, they can actually undo the actions that are taken. And we'll get to that a little bit later, but specifically to this portion, if you look at subsection 4 there, it's referencing back to the section we were just talking about talking about things ahead of time. It says a court may award a prevailing plaintiff reasonable attorney's fee and costs, specific to that section. And so, once again, litigation is never fun at all. And if there are attorney's fees and costs that are awarded, that does come, from it's a tax on the people. It's not going to come against an individual on the planning commission personally. And so, just as a, making sure that we're acting in the best interest of the public, we do things openly, and we make sure that we don't violate the act, because it could result in those attorney's fees and costs and more resources, tax dollars being spent on something that is unnecessary, as long as we follow the rules. So let's go to page 2 here. Meeting. It's a gathering of a public body, which we are, with a quorum present, convened by an individual who has authority to convene the meeting. And the purpose of that is to take public comment about a relevant matter, deliberate about a relevant matter, or take action upon a relevant matter. So you do all of those things. Public body just defines what it is. This public body is created by county ordinance. It consists of 2 or more individuals, and it expends, disperses. Technically, this body doesn't really expend or disperse tax revenue, but it is supported in whole or in part by tax revenue, and is vested with authority to make decisions regarding public business. A lot of times you're an advisory body that's making recommendations, but you still have the authority to make those decisions. Quorum. Sometimes people say, oh, it's just a quorum of how many are on the planning commission right now, but since it's a 7-member body, the minimum quorum is 4 right now. There will be some appointments next Tuesday that will add more to the current body. Relevant matter, that just means a matter within the scope and authority of the body. And training, so the presiding officer, which is Chair Sessions, ensures that the members of the public body are provided with annual training on the requirements of this chapter. So that's part of why we're doing this, is it is required by state statute that we at least review this. Obviously, I'm not going through everything, and if you have questions, you can throw those out. Public meeting, it includes workshop, and so any work sessions that we do, those are noticed under the same rules. And public body shall not give less than the 24 hours, so it has to be posted at least 24 hours in advance. I think that, you know, this isn't something that you as planning commissioners really have to worry about. Josh's office takes care of the noticing and things like that. If there is an update to an agenda, even if it was posted a week in advance or however far in advance it's posted, you just have to make that change before 24 hours before the meeting starts. This just goes over what's required to be in that notice. It talks about if you have an annual schedule, you post that once a year. Under 3A, since we do have the public notice website, and for any residents who are listening, you can go to the Utah Public Notice website and sign up for notifications for every meeting for the county commission or the planning commission, or meetings from the ATAB or whatever other boards and public bodies meet within the county. You can do that there, which has been kind of nice because then it's just automatic. But in addition to doing it there, we also have to post throughout the building at the anchor location where we meet. So this is probably more rare, but if there ever was a time to have an emergency meeting as a planning commission, that can happen, but there has to be as much notice as possible, right? So there's always exceptions. I believe that at one point, soon after I got here, Brian Cowan with the Weber Morgan Health Department wanted to do a meeting about masks, or, you know, the status of COVID, and it kind of came up quick, and they just gave as much notice as they could. Under 6, this is something to keep in mind. There may be times when a public comment comes up and you say, well, maybe that's something that could be addressed today, but even though it's not on the agenda, it's under the discretion of the presiding member of the public body. It may be discussed during an open meeting, even if it wasn't included, but you can't vote on that. That's not something that could be voted upon. If they bring it up and say, well, we want you to do X, Y, Z, you can't make any final determinations there. The minutes, this is just talking about what needs to be included. I think everyone does a really good job of doing that. Specifically here, it does say that you need to include the name of a person who is not a member of the public body, and after being recognized by the presiding member of a public body, provided testimony or comments. Every once in a while, you'll have a public commenter come up and they'll just jump into their comment because they're ready to go. And Debbie, I think you do a really good job of saying, hey, can you state your name and where you're from, just so we get that into the minutes. But that is required by state statute, as well as our own local meeting policies. I don't know that this comes up as much in planning commission meetings, but if there is an individual who's providing a presentation and they have a PowerPoint or they pass out a hard copy, they do need to provide either that electronic or hard copy in a way that can be included in the minutes. And so just keep that in mind. If someone does bring something they want to share, we want to get that into the record. There's a 30-day requirement for, the local public body. Since you're a public body that's not a state public body or a specified local public body, which is defined as an elected official, you just have to make pending minutes available within a reasonable time. And I don't know that you ever go beyond the 30 days, but I think you have a little more wiggle room than at least elected bodies. Okay. So now we're gonna skip over the closed sessions. Does anyone have any questions so far? Or have you ever had a reason that you think as a planning commission you would want to go into closed session? I think it maybe came up once as a question to me during a training before, but I don't know that you have any authority over budget or litigation or anything that typically is involved in a closed session, and so I can't really think of a time that you would have needed to go into that anyway. I just thought I'd throw it out if you have any questions on it.
What about something that's like highly contested, like the Wasatch Peaks development back in the day when it was being presented? Would there be enough like public outcry where maybe we want to just hold a public meeting to be able to, a closed meeting to discuss it?
So I don't know that at that point the public outcry would say, okay, this, because one of the reasons you can close a meeting is if you're discussing pending or reasonably imminent litigation. And so there may be public outcry, but does that mean that there's going to be pending litigation? Not necessarily. There could be. The litigation that came was in regard to the referendum rather than, with a developer or something like that. But in any of those situations, if you were the land use authority to make a final call, if it's that acrimonious, then you'd probably just want to refer that to the county commission anyway. They're the ones that are elected and are directly accountable to the people and have the authority to act on behalf of the county for litigation and things of that nature. I don't think that you want to get in the weeds on that. And that would be my recommendation to you, is that you don't get into the weeds on that. You just say, okay, we understand that this is a very, this sensitive, or, it seems like that there's a lot of high emotions and feelings and passion behind this. We are going to recommend this to the county commission, and you'll be able to, make your comments there again, and then just let it go. They don't pay you enough to handle that. So,
But a threat of I'm going to sue you is not a pending litigation, just someone just threatening.
I don't think so. I think depending on the circumstances. So if someone is threatening to sue, but we've done a full analysis of the case law and we understand that we're on solid footing, or we've looked at Utah Fair Housing, that was something that came up, and they say we're going to sue, and we said, well, or let's say that the citizens say, well, we're going to sue if you pass something. We say, well, it's an administrative item, and if they check the boxes, we have to. We know that lawsuit, it may come, but it's not something where we have a lot of liability. We just say, okay, motion to dismiss, it's an administrative, they check the boxes, and here we are. And so I think it may depend a little bit, but there's a lot of people that threaten to sue, and I look at those threats and I say, well, that's not reasonably imminent. A lot of times it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's something that people think will persuade you to take different course. But it's the merits of the argument that are persuasive, not the threats of litigation. And so I would advise you, and if we say, okay, we think that this is reasonably imminent, then I think I would say, okay, this is probably a time where we could go into closed session or not. But, if we get into closed session and they're like, well, I'm worried about this, I said, sorry, we can't talk about that because that's not reasonably imminent. And I'll show you that as the county attorney, I'm the one that is tasked with enforcing the Open Meetings Act. So just a couple more spots. I'm going to jump to page 17, so we're getting close to the end now. Now, we did talk about earlier that we don't want to collaborate with each other to see how everyone's voting. Those deliberations are going to happen in a public meeting, but it does say that they're not saying you can't, as a member of a public body, send emails when you're not convened in a meeting. Just keep those emails like, okay, I'm asking for more information, I'm asking questions here, but it's not going to become that deliberation and, hey, how are you going to vote? You're not asking those types of emails, you're just sending the emails to gather more information. You could share your thoughts, but don't get to the point of the deliberation and decision, because that's reserved for the public meetings. I don't know that we've had to do this, but the chair could ask someone to remove themselves from a meeting, and if they don't remove, we can call the sheriff. But it does say, even though someone has a right to come in and speak, they can be removed if they're willfully disrupting and order is seriously compromised. You can have someone removed at that point. If there is a violation of this act, typically, in most cases, it says a suit to void final action shall be commenced within 90 days after the date of the action. So there is that period where they have to act more quickly. It's not like a 4-year statute of limitations. It can be 30 days, but I don't think you'll ever deal with issuance of bonds, notes, or other evidences of indebtedness. But that has a shorter timeline. Okay, here, this is where it says the Attorney General, county attorneys shall enforce this chapter. And the criminal penalty for a closed meeting violation, which once again, if you never go into a closed meeting, you don't have to worry about that. But you could be charged with a Class B misdemeanor. That's up to 6 months in jail and up to $1,000 fine. But once again, I don't think that will ever become an issue with this body and what you have to deal with. So I try to keep it pretty short and sweet. Any questions?
Does that count for our training, Garrett?
Yeah, that's your training. I mean, I could draw it out if you want, but I didn't want to keep you here too late.
Ready to do the next one? And be done with training so we don't have to do the next training session? I don't know. How long? Is that a long training?
Well,
Little more
yeah, I
complicated.
think that's probably because we don't want to like bore you so much. It's and so I was talking to Josh and like, well, I don't know, maybe it's going to be 15 minutes twice and we'll be done. But then I thought this will probably be about 20 and now we're done. So rather than me coming back next time, I think Janet can just do annexation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Entertaining.
I think we made the most boring planning commission meeting between the two of us.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I should have had a YouTube video to to give examples of bad open meetings or something like that, but maybe I'll do that next time.
Excerpts from our past meetings.
Here's a bad example.
Talk to you.
What we've done.
Josh wanted to throw somebody out when you weren't here.
I heard.
He's
So,
my first
He
meeting.
removed himself.
yeah. And sometimes they'll remove themselves as well, but there are times where, I mean, it might even be a safety issue too, and I would just say, hey, call the sheriff immediately, have someone call, maybe Josh, maybe you can have, be like, hey, if something's getting out of hand, I'm going to have Jeremy or Judy or whoever it is to make that call or text or whoever it is. So, I mean, land use can be a very passionate thing.
It is.
So.
Thank you. Any more business from staff? Do we have any questions for staff?
I got one for, I don't know, you or Josh, if I may. I talked with Cindy Carter the other day on the area plan for Porterville. She's not comfortable presenting it the way it is. She wants to go back and reconstitute at least the meeting member level. Do I have to do anything with that? I mean, I'm willing to do the meeting, but I don't want to get in trouble doing something I shouldn't have done on it. Is there, they have the document pretty much ready, but she doesn't.
Who wants to review it one more time?
The committee wasn't elected. The committee wasn't appointed. It was just applicants, and you got together. I don't see that there's anything wrong with you meeting again. If you want to meet again to go through what you want to present as your area plan, there's nothing legally
Okay.
binding to
That's
keep
what
you
I
from
need to
doing
know.
that.
Thank you.
There's also nothing legally binding for you saying, I'm done. So,
Well, I'd
it's-
like to get the plan put together.
whatever you want to do, it would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No more questions? Ready for a motion to approve the minutes? Got your corrections in? Any concerns? So ready for that motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Got a motion by Member Wilson to approve the minutes,
I'll second.
and a second by Member Little. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
Motion by Member Little, a second by Member Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.